some nice drawings. And thank you for providing those to us. And so Grace, you want to start?
Grace Blakeslee, Commission staff. At its June 13, 2017 meeting, which we held in Watsonville, the E&D TAC Committee discussed the Santa Cruz Metro Route 71 inbound bus stop relocation and design, and asked that, and following that meeting, the committee sent a letter to the County of Santa Cruz staff asking for more information about the relocation and design. Today, the County of Santa Cruz staff is here to provide you with information about the project and answer questions that you might have. I'm going to hand it over to County Staff Steve Wiesner to present the project and the design. And we do have some of the slides, design information and slides that were in your packet to put up on the screen here, so I'll work to get those up.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having us here to tell you a little bit about our project that we have going. I do want to apologize for that. I think there was a bit of a delay in us getting back to you. One of our main staff members who's been with the county for about 30 years, Jack Saratkoff, who's our traffic engineer, excuse me, recently retired from county service. And I think that he had all the best intentions of coming to the E&D TAC here and discussing your inquiries, but he had to leave in kind of an untimely fashion and much quicker than he thought due to family illness. And so this kind of, I think, sort of fell through the cracks a little bit, but you know, we're here today to try to answer any questions that you might have. And I understand specifically you're interested in the Route 71 bus stop that's being relocated as part of the Phase 1 Aptos Village Improvements Project. And so what I wanted to do was, this isn't a super formal presentation. We've got some materials here that we can go through. What I will tell you is, I didn't know a whole lot about this up until just about the last several weeks, kind of 3 or 4 weeks. I came up to speed on this and became a little bit more aware of the design details. And in preparation for our meeting today, I've had several meetings. One, I went through a lot of this stuff with Grace. We looked at the plans together. But I've also got here with me Tim Nguyen, who's one of the project engineers representing the county for this project as well, who's kind of understands what's going on with the design. But also we've met with Metro staff, both with Ciro and with Pete, and we've gone through this as well. So we've had several meetings to get down to sort of exactly what does the design entail, what does it call for, what was the rationale for it, what were some of the standards that were used to develop the plan. So I'm hoping that we'll have a fairly comprehensive discussion today about all the details surrounding the relocation of the bus stop and what the new bus stop's going to look like, and its access points and so forth. So I think that maybe we'll save questions for the end, if that's okay. I mean, there'll certainly be time to do a Q&A, but let me just run through the way that I understand the project, and I'm sure it'll motivate some questions from you all. And just if you could maybe jot them down and save them for the end, that'd be fantastic. So what you're seeing up here on the screen right now is an overall vision of what the village corridor, the SoCal Drive corridor, is going to look like once several phases of the work is completed. And this won't be for some time; it'll be probably a year or two from now. But the project that I know you all are real interested in is the one that's under construction right now at Chalk Gulch Road, which is the intersection of SoCal Drive and Chalk Gulch Road. But we've got a couple other phases that are also being considered and that are going to come on board as well. One is actually a new intersection here. It's going to be called Braid Street, and that's part of the Barry Swenson development of the Aptos Village. And then we're also have another intersection that's getting modified and upgraded at Aptos Creek Road. And that's going to get a signal as well as Chalk Gulch Road. And so I wanted to give you this kind of bigger picture and context so you can see kind of how the whole thing's going to work together. And specifically speaking, before I go on to Trout Gulch, but Parade Street, which is going to be the sort of the closest intersection to Trout Gulch, that's going to have a left in and right turns in, but it's going to have a right turn out only. And if I believe that the existing bus stop, which we've got a photo of as well, is kind of in this area, and it has its own dedicated crosswalk. I think it kind of crosses SoCal Drive somewhere around this area right here, which is in between Aptos Creek Road and what's going to be the new Parade Street intersection. So in the Trout Gulch Road project plans, the bus stop is getting moved from its current location to what I'll say is just south of Trout Gulch Road on Soquel Drive. Okay, and that'll be for the northbound traffic. Okay, so for everybody to kind of get a little bit of a context there, I think we can move on to the next slide.
How far apart are the three signals?
I don't know exactly.
Very close together, though. Okay.
Yeah, I know that's a
Important.
relative statement, yeah.
Thank you.
And when you say signals, do you mean stoplights, or what do you,
Yeah, signalized intersections are ones that have the red, yellow and green.
regular stoplights?
Yeah, as opposed to a stop sign.
You're not talking
Or
about, you're not
uncontrolled.
talking about train signals, you're talking about,
No.
Correct, yeah. Okay, so, so what you're looking at here now is this is the bus stop, sort of center, and I know Grace kind of. This is the, so this is a plan view. You're looking down on Soquel Drive, and sometimes these maps are a little hard to read. This is Trout Gulch here. Okay, so this is kind of the northbound traffic will come this way. And this drawing right here, it's contours, and it's got a lot of detail on it. This is the kind of thing that a contractor is going to need to build this. But what this does is gives you the concept, and we could go back to the previous slide, but there'll be a crosswalk from one side of Soquel Drive to the other. And so we've got curb cut ramps on both sides. And I want to talk about this system of ramps, sidewalk, and the bus stop sort of in three different phases, if you will. One, there's a series of ramps, which basically involve curb cuts, basically getting from the crosswalks up from the street up to the sidewalk, and getting across the railroad tracks as well. And then we've got a sidewalk which leads basically from the ramps to the bus stop, okay? The bus stop is going to be basically made up of a deployment area where the bus will be able to pull over and deploy its rig to get people and devices on and off the bus, and then it'll have an area for coverage, right? So, and I think we're still working on. This isn't in the plans, which is remind me of what the bus coverage.
Oh, a shelter, you mean?
Yeah, the bus shelter.
Out there.
It's going to have to be kind of a specific type of shelter that's going to cover the area where the benches will be, such that it doesn't have posts in the sidewalk. So what the idea would be is the structure is going to come from behind and it'll support the shelter. So I think, so if you just kind of visualize three different things. One, there's the ramps, two, there's the sidewalk, and three, there's the bus stop. So with that, let's just go ahead and move on. I think we can kind of talk about the ramps here first. I think it's the next one. Yeah.
Sheet 13, I think you want.
Yeah, no, 13. Yeah, that's the one. And then, so the other thing I want to say is we've got hard copies as well on the table, so, and we can kind of pass those around. If this is a little too far for you all, because it might be tough to see back there, we've got some hard copies here if you want to take a look at it.
Sheet 8 and 13 are also in the packet. I did have some extras. If you need more, we can make some more copies. But sheets 13, this one, and 8 that we were looking at before are also in the packet that I know.
So, in developing, so the design is done by Bowman & Williams, so we have a consultant who did the design work, and we actually had also the designer on the phone with us for quite some time as well, kind of discussing some of the rationale for why the system is laid out the way it is. And just to kind of remind you, so there's a crosswalk that comes here across Soquel Drive. There's also a crosswalk right here that goes across Aptos Street, and I believe another one across Soquel Drive at this location as well. Is that right, Tony?
Yeah.
Okay. So what those are going to do is they're going to lead pedestrians and folks who want to use the bus system, the bus stop, basically curb cuts. And these are kind of standard style curb cuts that you'll see in design manuals. We have them as part of the county design criteria. Caltrans has standards for these types of things as well. And the curb cuts are coming from these two locations. So one on the Aptos Street side, and two, and I'm in the way, I'm trying to see these grades though, which actually are kind of hard, so I may need a hard copy myself, coming from the Soquel Drive side. Can I get it, maybe look at that hard copy a little bit? Because zoomed in there, they're actually not super clear. So.
How do you define curb cuts?
So the curb cut is basically where, you have a normal like curb, which would basically contain flow, storm drainage. And so it's a cut in the curb to allow people to traverse, basically from the crosswalk up onto the sidewalk.
And it's more level with the street.
Correct, and that's where you'll see the truncated domes and the types of things, and I believe that's what the honeycomb section kind of indicates is where the truncated domes are gonna go. Okay, the truncated domes are those yellow, yeah, that have texture, the bumps that have texture to indicate for folks maybe, you know, where they're getting on and off out of the street and on and off the sidewalk. So what we consider the ramp area, so don't get confused by the honeycomb area, because that's just a truncated dome. It's going to be the same exact slope as the rest of the ramp. What we consider the ramp area is basically where you go from the lip of curb, or from the lip of the gutter, up onto what we're going to call the landing area, right? And so what you see here is, this one's 8%, this one here is 7%, okay? And we're using a lot of design standards to do this, right? We're using Metro's guidelines, we're using Caltrans ADA standards, we're using the own county's design criteria as well to come up with these standards. What drives these designs quite a bit is to make sure that we're ADA compliant and that we're not exceeding any of the allowed slopes and so forth, and distances where you have to have landings and ramps. So we've got 8% here, we've got 7% here, and what that'll do is that'll put you up onto a landing area in both spots, right? And so the landing area will has a few different slopes involved with it. This particular one right here has a 2% cross slope going in 2 different directions. Now, keep in mind, what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with grades that are kind of set. When I say grades, I mean elevations. Grades that are set on Soquel Drive, grades that are set on Chalk Gulch Road, and grades that are set on Aptos Street. So it's a bit of a design trick to try and figure out how to actually get these ramps to work such that we're meeting our minimum grade standards, okay? So most of the design is actually driven by these standards, if you will, okay? So down here you've got 8%, up here you've got 7%, you've got a landing, both that are either 2% or less, and then you have another ramp, okay, which is going to involve a series of truncated domes as well to get you up and over the railroad tracks, okay? So you've got ramp, landing, ramp. Same thing with the other side coming from Aptos Street. You've got ramp, landing, ramp. That gets you over the railroad tracks. So whether you're traversing from Soquel Drive to Aptos Street or Soquel Drive to the bus stop, you've got everything you need. Okay, so now coming down from there, you've got another ramp, okay, which is going to take you down to, and that's I think it's 7.6% is what I'm seeing here. That's right, being developed. Okay, and the sidewalk is basically following the profile grade of Soquel Drive. Okay, so it varies. And I think we have a drawing that shows that. That's
Sheet 8.
So now I'm going to go onto the sidewalk.
Between the top
Yeah.
there, and then here's the road grade.
So and this is a little trickier to read, but if, this is, again, these are engineering drawings, so they're not like, you know, necessarily made for the layman, but I'll see if I can walk you through this. Typically, it doesn't line up perfectly, but typically this profile down here is going to line up with the plan view pretty closely. So if you look at a section of sidewalk and you want to know, well, how steep is that going to be? You can just kind of drop down and you can take a look down here. This is called the profile elevation. That profile is an elevation of what we call the flow line of the gutter. So that's going to follow the gutter pan, if you will. Okay, and the sidewalk, the steepness of the sidewalk is basically going to follow exactly what the flow line is. So it's a maximum of 8%. It starts out to be about 3.5%, okay, right in this area where you first come onto the sidewalk. Starts out to be about 3.5%, and then there's a curve. We call these vertical curves. So you can imagine a horizontal curve is something where you're turning like this, but we also design vertical curves into our roads and into our sidewalks and so forth. And so you go into a vertical curve, so it's a little bit of a curve, and then it hits a maximum of 8%, and I believe that's going to be in about this location right here, if you can see where my finger. And then I believe it kind of shallows out on down to where the bus stop's going to be, and the bus stop has its own specifics as well. So I want to be clear, because I think that this has been characterized as a ramp, this section right here. It's not a ramp, it's a sidewalk. It's attached to the road, it's in the public right-of-way. And basically the sidewalk detail that we'll be using, it's a standard, I think, 48-inch sidewalk, is that right? 4 feet wide? Mm-hmm. It's attached to, it's basically like you get your gutter, your curb, and then your sidewalk. So it's kind of like 3 elements attached together, which comprise basically your curb, gutter, and sidewalk, if you will. The standards we use for that is basically just follow the grade of the road. And you can imagine there's a lot of roads out there that have varying grades. Our sidewalks follow the roads. Okay, so we can move on, I think, to the bus stop now, the detail of the bus stop. And I think that actually, yeah, which is actually, you know what, we could leave this open for a second.
Okay.
So, you know, we have Metro here. We work really close with them on this. We will say it is a pretty tight area. It's kind of, it's you know, anything you do out there on Soquel Drive in the Aptos Village, everything's very tight. You're bound by the railroad tracks, and you're bound by basically all the businesses, right, along the, I guess that would be the western side of the road or the southern side of the road. So it's very difficult. You're kind of threading a needle to get any kind of standard transportation system through there. But we worked with the Metro on this. This is the Metro's typical bus stop layout with a shelter. And the main thing was that we discovered that was to have, for the deployment area for the bus, was to have basically a 5-foot by 8-foot pad landing that met the, I think, maximum grades, right? Whatever the maximum grades are, and I don't know if you have them on here. Maybe you can tell me.
1 to 48 cross slope.
Which is
2%.
roughly 2%.
And then paralleling the street,
Yeah.
match the roadway.
Match the roadway, okay. And then there's an area for a shelter, and our shelter is gonna be, I think, pretty much a custom shelter. We're coming to the conclusion that we're gonna have to probably, like I said, have the structure actually come from kind of behind the benches and support the shelter this way, and not have any poles, and that way we don't have anything in the way of the travel, you know? Basically, there's no poles or any kind of obstructions in the travel path. So this is the design standard we were using, so let's go to the actual design. Okay, so once again, you can see the sidewalk coming into the deployment area. Okay, and the deployment area is this spot right here. So this is where the buses will pull up and they'll deploy their equipment right there. Right, that's the ADA loading zone. And we've got a 5x8. No problem getting that in. We've got a maximum 5% going across this way, which is longitudinal, which is with the road. And then we've got it designed as a 2% cross slope going this way, so it'll drain nice, but it won't be too steep. This area right here is where we're going to add the shelter. And like I said, there'll be no posts going into the sidewalk this way. We're going to wholly support this from behind and come up and over like that.
We're still determining the model of shelter.
Yeah,
so
that's not in this contract.
I wouldn't say for sure that 100% of no posts in the ADA shelter location.
Well, I think the goal is to not have anything in the path of travel. Right? So, and I think we've been discussing this with Metro, and I think there's products out there that can serve that purpose, yeah? Okay. So there you go. This is the pad where the bus is going to pull off. The drainage is going to just flow across this pad. There'll be a little bit of a V gutter right here to allow for drainage to get through the site. There'll be a tiny retaining wall, I believe, that kind of circles the back of perimeters the back of the bus shelter and pull-out area. And I think that's kind of the nuts and bolts of what this bus stop is going to look like and how it's going to serve everyone. Now, just to give you some comparative, I guess, just an idea of what it's going to feel like, what the experience is going to be like. So it's going to be a maximum of 8% coming down to the bus stop. And we've discussed with Metro, like what other bus stops do we have out there that's comparable to this, so that experience, you know, people who are going to use this, what's their experience going to be like. So. Do we have any pictures of any of those?
I can bring those up, I don't have them really available, but you wanted to describe so you mentioned to me, I can pull them up.
Is there no sidewalk where the bus stops? Because I think that's what I heard at a meeting. The sidewalk stops before you get to the area where people
Correct.
get on and off.
It terminates at the bus stop.
It terminates, so
Yeah.
what are people stepping out onto or getting out? There's not a sidewalk.
You're talking about the deployment area?
Yeah, I guess that's the word.
Like a wide sidewalk.
Yeah, I think that's what you're getting out on in the deployment area, when you're getting off the bus. Is that your question?
Yeah, but there will be a sidewalk there.
Yes.
Yes,
To
there'll be
the end of the bus stop there would be.
At the end of the bus stop.
You just wouldn't be able to go further down
right,
beyond the bus stop.
right. It terminates at the bus stop, the sidewalk is. And then you're on the bus stop, which is going to be, you know, fairly flat. Let's see if we can get this picture up. Can you rotate it? But yeah, go ahead.
Have you considered other locations for the bus stop? I don't, like, it seems to me,
Let's hang on, what is it? We've got a lot of
there's a side
conversation going.
conversation here.
Let's wait for them to finish.
Can you guys,
Can we,
can you share the conversation?
hang on, we've got several people talking at once, so we had someone,
This was
Stanley,
Stanley
was it
Southerland,
you?
but I will defer until they give a report on what they just said.
Go ahead, tell everyone what you just
The
told me.
Maryland area.
Could you pull that sheet back up,
Which one?
please?
Oh, the shelter
The
one.
bus stop.
Here.
Okay. So what Steve's talking about is, in fact, that there is full cement along this area. That's your bus shelter, and this is your path of travel, the sidewalk. And it goes further up and curves around to where the ramps were at. So at no point within this stop are you going to be stepping onto aggregate or some kind of undeveloped area. It's all developed.
It'll appear to be a large sidewalk, but it's the bus stop.
It is.
And what's the length and width of that, did you say? Where you get off the bus?
I didn't say,
8 feet wide by about 40 feet long.
yeah. Yeah. And that'll encompass the deployment area and the shelter.
Question,
So,
Stanley Southerland.
Mhm.
So, if 40 feet long is the length of a standard bus. Well, with the entrance and exit curvature there, the diagonals, would that allow the bus to completely parallel the curb at the landing zone so that people could get on and off both doors without having to step down to the street?
That's a good question.
I don't know what the length is, totally can't read these plans.
I think, well, Tim just said 40 feet.
Is it 40?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I think it is.
Here, let's take a look. It's right
They're
here.
usually a little bit
Let's take a
longer.
look. Looks to me like it's 50 to 60 to 50 to 75.
Forgot to bring a scale.
Oh, it's the vertical curve that's 80 feet. So, okay, bus stop limit. Okay, here we go. So it's about. So about 250 there. That's about, no, you know, I need scale.
Isn't there a dimension on one of the drawings?
No, it's done by stationing actually, but. I'll scale the
Do we have a ruler in the room?
If you guys, if you look at number 8, sheet 8, right there, there's definitely a 40-foot marker between the two points of the bus path itself, or the bus stop path.
It's just not there.
It's broken up as 11, and there's a 40-foot there too.
He's talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, it is 40 feet on the plan. You're right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's 40 feet.
Yeah.
That's right. It's
No,
shown
yes.
right here. It's 40 feet.
Yeah.
So if you had to deploy here and you were in Concord, it looks like you might be able to get in and actually make it. Well, it's really about the turning radiuses of the
It's
bus.
very tight, it seems to me.
You need to understand that this begins here, at this juncture,
Yeah. That's
The
your
angle.
taper, yeah.
all right? So the bus will come in and take this kind of an angle, then straighten up here, theoretically allowing for the deployment of personnel,
Yeah, theoretically it should work.
front and rear door. Right? Because there's also some factors that might involve the fact that people, depending on the driver, they have to be trained. Some of them will take the extra caution, some of them may not be as cautious, and they'll kind of come into it. People ringing the bell at the last minute, and expecting the operator to move in. If they don't have enough time to deploy in, they're gonna come in at a little kitty corner. But then Metro, people that ride the bus always exit out the front door anyway, most of them.
Both doors.
No.
Well, both doors.
don't.
But there's an unwritten rule that people will always cede to those coming off the bus first, off the front door before they enter the front door. So there's that whole dynamic going on there.
And then I heard you say at another meeting that you cannot pull the bus totally off the road, that it would still be into the road about 12 inches.
Approximately.
It's gonna block traffic that's behind.
Not really. It's not that severe of an issue for us.
My follow-up on that is, isn't it standard practice to have more straight curb in front and behind a bus at a bus stop so that the bus has a little bit of wiggle room
Yeah.
to parallel the curb?
Well,
5 feet in front, 5 feet behind, you have a little leeway rather than making parallel it
again,
exactly the length of the bus.
it's the angles that you're looking at. There's not enough room to put a full-size 50-foot bus stop. So what you
And
do
why is that?
Probably because they wanted to keep the angle as much as possible. I mean, I'm not a design engineer. I'm just telling you that this is how you're going to get the bus angled straight here. And then when it pulls out, it'll angle out again. So it's the angles.
Yeah, I understand.
Take-
They have an angle to get
So-
in, but it looks like it doesn't allow an average bus driver enough leeway to come in and parallel the curb. But, you know, maybe you've got really accurate bus drivers, where this route will get an accurate bus driver. Another question I have, you already answered it here, but it looks like the width of the bus landing zone, if that crosshatched area is concrete, the same as the sidewalk, it looks
Talking
like,
about these crosshatches or the dots?
I mean the dots,
Okay.
whatever those
Yeah, yeah.
dots are.
That's new concrete.
That's new concrete,
Yeah,
and the street is asphalt.
correct.
So it looks like there isn't enough width for the entire width of the bus to be on concrete at the stop.
No, you have to understand that this undoubtedly is going to be concrete, only because if you're redesigning a new bus stop, it's required that you have what they call a static pad,
Right.
all right? So
That's my
that
point.
as buses come in on asphalt, they tend to leave divots because they pull in and then the weight kind of
Correct.
settles down the asphalt. This is concrete. If I'm reading this correctly, the dots are all concrete. So there's your pad here.
Correct.
That's your static pad, bus will stand there, rest there instead of on the asphalt.
So that's the same width as the sidewalk, so it's 4 feet.
This here?
Yeah.
That sidewalk width there at that point is 8 feet wide.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, this here is 8 feet.
if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, this is the pad for the bus.
Correct.
This is the passenger loading zone,
Correct.
and this is the curb.
No curve here.
And here's a sidewalk. Is that an 8-foot sidewalk or a 4
Four.
foot? I thought It's 4.
Yeah.
So that's 4. Length of my finger to a knuckle, that's 4.
Actually, I think the width of the sidewalk is 5 feet.
Okay, 5 feet, so this is 4 to 5 feet. It's not the full width of the bus.
It's 103 inches. 100 area of about 8 feet width and width. And you divide it into the 40-foot or more length that current stop now has. If you move it one way or the other, you're still going to be taking up that much number of spaces that they needed for the project. Essentially, the reason for moving the stop is so that more parking would be available at the location that these business persons wanted. Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, Gary Lindstrom.
Here's the asphalt.
Well,
So there should be a little more concrete there.
oh, I see what you're saying about the concrete. I don't know. I mean, that's,
So if we go back to the striping plan, you can kind of see a little bit how it flows with traffic. It's a little bit more difficult to see it.
Sheet 32.
And if you
Is this
zoom
what you're
in,
thinking?
if you zoom in on that.
Let's not use that sheet, use sheet 32, please.
That's what it was.
Zoom in on that.
So now keep in mind, right, we have a bus stop on the other side going south, right?
Yes,
You can see what the existing configuration is there.
well, there is room for the bus to pull off the road totally.
Yeah, just barely, but yeah. So you can see we're kind of weaving our way, amongst really tight area. And I think just speaking to why the stop didn't actually get made longer, because it's a steep area. It's actually a slope up to the railroad tracks. It's very difficult to kind of thread this in within the existing railroad right-of-way that you're seeing here, which is this line right here. And trying to stay all within our own right-of-way and create that bus stop. So that's kind of why that got created like that. And so, while it was brought up that yes, the bus won't 100% be able to pull out of the traffic lane, that there's a little bit of forgiveness because you've got a through lane here, you've got a fairly wide shoulder as well. And you've also got this left-hand turn pocket, right? So, which we don't expect will stack up that much. And so it's fairly likely that if you're behind the bus, you'll probably be able to sneak around the bus, with the exception of when this stacking lane right here is totally queued up. But there's a lot of areas where buses stop and don't pull out of traffic lanes at all. They completely block traffic behind them.
But that's not desirable. And in building a new site, you don't want to encourage that.
There is debate on whether it's beneficial to have a bus pull off the entire roadway. It depends on what perspective you're looking at it. If you're looking at it from the perspective of an automobile driver, it's going to create some delay for you if you're not able to navigate around the bus. If you're looking at it from the perspective of a bus that no longer has to re-enter travel, then you will have less of a delay for re-entering the roadway. So it's definitely circumstantial, but there's definitely dialogue around whether it's a benefit to transit users or a greater challenge in travel time. Veronica, we have a couple people
hang on.
up, and I just want to remind people, since Veronica can't see you, if you just say your name so that she can make sure everyone has a chance
That's
to talk.
because I want to make sure.
Marilyn,
Okay, we
the
have
one
not.
that rides the bus
Okay, hang
all
on a
the
minute,
time.
Marilyn, please. Thank you. We haven't heard from John yet, so let's do John and then Marilyn.
Oh, thank you. I'm just taking this all in. It occurs to me that because as I was reminded when I was taking buses yesterday, including buses out by Cabrillo College, buses who come in to pick up somebody using a mobility device might be even a little farther from the stop because they give some room to be able to deploy their ramps.
Yes.
So that will add to, as far as the distance of the bus from the stop, when you're picking up or letting off someone using a mobility device. So that will add, there's that to consider. And also, I'm just trying to add this up that no one is saying that the sidewalk slope can be whatever it wants because it has to just conform with where it finds itself. I'm not hearing someone say that, am I?
Well, do you want us to show you the particular standard that we're following for that? The language, there's some language. Is that what your question is?
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to, I'm gonna make sure I just didn't misunderstand, because being a new stop, it has to meet the ADA standards. It has to meet the ADA standard here, except for the sidewalk, which, is pretty much just the way it is.
Well, it does have to meet the ADA standard for a sidewalk. The sidewalk has different standards than ramps. If that's what your question is.
Well, right, yes, and I just want, yes, clarification, please.
Okay, yeah. Tim, do you want to point out the standard that's being followed? So this is the tricky spot area where when you're dealing with roads, and of course we've got roads that are very steep throughout Santa Cruz County that we've got sidewalks on. That there's really not a lot of very practical ways to build sidewalks other than the steepness of the road. And this is these are the ADA rules the way that we understand them. You can find these in several different design guidelines. But what it talks about is that walks and paths have to have these resting areas, in intervals of 400 feet that are 5 feet in length. But when a pedestrian access routes are contained wholly within a street or a highway right-of-way, which we have here, it basically says that the pedestrian access route shall not exceed the general grade established for the adjacent street or highway. So that's the standard that we're following here. So does that answer your question?
It's getting there, thanks.
Okay. And it also says the accessibility standard for sidewalks, all of these resting areas and interval lengths and so forth, they don't apply to sidewalks. They only apply to what they call these separated paths and ramps. And so forth. So that's why I think the designer went through such great pains to make all of the grades work for the ramps and the curb cuts that are coming off of the streets from the crosswalks up and over the railroad tracks and so forth. Those are considered ramps. But when you get to basically the path that's adjacent to the street, that's connected to the street within the highway right of way, it's a sidewalk. And that was the rationale that the designer used for that.
And we circle
Okay, Stanley, and then we'll let Marilyn speak again.
Oh, there's someone behind you who wanted to speak who hasn't talked.
That's all right, I can wait.
Oh, okay. The other thought is, after the curve, the road sort of straightens a little bit. If you could go back to the plan that's the farthest out, you know, the highest element.
This what you think of?
Yeah. So you're putting the bus stop here, you could also consider putting it here. Is there a reason that it doesn't fit there, or would that not be a good spot because of what's across the street?
You have some pretty heavy geometric constraints right there.
How so?
Well, there's buildings that are almost right next to the sidewalk right here, right? And I don't know if you're familiar with this area, but I think, is this where the auto?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the
It's gonna be real tight for them to begin with, just to get, it's gonna be a rolled curb here just to get their cars in and out and still
But that-
operate their business. And then you've got the, and I don't know what it's called, they call it the old Britannia Arms, because this used to be Britannia Arms, the restaurant here, which they're already losing some parking just based on this design, because where you see, well, they're actually adding a left-hand turn there. So the geometry, I haven't looked at it myself really, really closely, but I don't think the geometry would allow for a bus stop there.
The other thing is it's, in practice, you often try to have bus stops going northbound and southbound across from one another. So the current relocation places it directly across from the southbound bus stop.
But that's not really required because people that come.
No.
Not required
No.
to in practice, I see.
I think all the locations were looked at fairly closely. It's a tight spot, and I think I'll speak a little bit to the comment that it's a brand new facility and that we should make the brand new facilities as perfect as we possibly can, and I don't totally disagree with that, but keep in mind, this is actually a retrofit project. You're not seeing a total road reconstruction here. This is not a brand new road by any means. It's a retrofit project really to get a signalized system in there and to do some improvements for the village. And we worked, I think, very closely with a lot of the village businesses and so forth to try to satisfy some of their needs when it comes to parking, comes to pedestrian flow and all these types of other things as well. So it really is a retrofit project is what the way I would consider this project. It's not a brand new facility, so to speak.
You had a question behind you?
Go ahead and let Marilyn, she was waiting.
Oh, okay.
When there's a project, I always ask, why is this happening and who benefits? My understanding is a lot of this retrofit and the transformations, moving the bus stop, et cetera, are at taxpayer expense largely. And of course, the developer benefits. Now, as a regular rider of the bus, and I observe how the bus drivers do an excellent job. They're very careful and looking out for safety. So when I come to this place, because I'm coming from Freedom Boulevard area on the 71 bus, and we get to here, I ask the driver, are you aware that they're planning to move the bus stop from the present location to this location before the intersection where Trout Gulch comes into Soquel Drive? Hardly any of them have heard of it. They've not been consulted. And here are some of the comments I've taken down. That's not going to work. That's going to back up traffic a lot. It's already congested here. And little discussion just a few minutes ago about drivers will be trying to come around the bus that will be sticking out to go right on Trout Gulch as they're coming from, heading north, right? And one bus driver said, that's illegal to do that. Another driver said, that's an accident waiting to happen. This is not safe, that we can't pull out, we can't see well because the road's going up. There's an incline going up there. Another driver said, we don't like to lose our existing bus stops. So observing this, I think they know what they're talking about. This is not a good location. And I also feel when something, if you're doing a normal house plan with something and you see there's a problem with it, it's not gonna work, you alter it, you change it. But this is to satisfy Barry Svensson Builder, and it is really gonna make the area much more congested and undesirable for people to come to. Plus you've got the bridge on one side, the trestle on the other. And maybe Gary or someone else can talk to that, but I agree with the driver, it looks like an accident waiting to happen.
Say your name.
Gary Lindstrom.
Okay, Gary.
Okay. Could you go back to that other slide that you were just on? My name is Gary Lindstrom. I'm a resident of Aptos for over 50 years. And I'm really concerned about this mess that's being created in the village. The bus stop is currently right about here. All you have to do is pick it up, move it 75 feet forward, dig the sign up, dig a new hole, pour the cement, and problem solved. Their concern was that it was so close to Parade Street. By moving over here, there's more than enough room for the bus to pull off because they already have enough room. And at that point, they have the same amount of room or more. There's nothing but logs laying there on the ground to stop the traffic and the parking from getting too close to the railroad tracks. There is ample room to even move the logs a little bit closer without creating any danger. And if the train ever gets going, which it may never, okay, it won't have a problem with that. But by creating the bus stop back here, you're creating a perfect storm. The traffic comes around underneath that trestle so fast. I was standing there the other day just watching, clocking some of these people, okay? And they were slamming their brakes on because there were cars. When they came around the trestle down here, by the time they got here, they were slamming on brakes because there was already 3 cars at the stop sign. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, any of you, but lately, the last month or so, Aptos has gained a new nickname. It's called Traffic Town now.
Oh.
This is going to do nothing but create more traffic. And by saying there's only going to be a few people here to turn left into the shopping center, you've got Starbucks in there, which right there's at least 30 cars coming and going out of there every 15 minutes, just for that. You've got the credit union right there, which has got another 15 or 20 cars every 30 minutes or so. I mean, the numbers are probably higher, but I'm just guesstimating at a low guess. Plus you've got cars coming from the other direction, and it's just not safe. Somebody's going to get killed or seriously hurt. Because once you put those signals in, nobody's going to be polite and wave other cars through and stuff like that. They're going to be racing for that green light. And if it turns yellow, God forbid, they step on the gas to get through there and somebody comes around here at this intersection. Because you're going to have the bus right there. And if somebody's already off the bus or waiting to cross the street, I mean, there's a lot of accidents to be had right there at that spot. But all you have to do is literally move that bus stop 75 feet forward, move the sign, and problem solved. Because from that point, once this intersection's in, you can move the the crosswalk where it is shown right there. The bus will be stopping right there. They can go right there because the crosswalk now is back here. So you're already going to put it in here, and if the bus stops there, it's very convenient, and it's safer for them there because, again, they have a stoplight and everything. But it just is a perfect storm waiting to happen.
Family circle again?
Okay, hang on, can someone maybe address the things that have kind of just been brought up, because that might clarify things, since I don't know where Gary was pointing. Just to clarify things a little bit, would anyone like to address those comments?
Well, let me maybe do a little bit of active listening and see if I heard what you said. What I think Gary was speaking to was where the present location of the bus stop for northbound traffic is between Aptos Creek Road and where the future Parade Street intersection is right now. And
Just about where that line is.
yeah, and I think, right, the crosswalk's kind of right here.
Right.
Forgive me for interrupting you. So Parade Street, when the bus is stopped, Parade Street would be like in front of the bus or behind the bus?
You're talking about the
In front.
existing or the new?
No, the Parade Street, the new Parade Street would be behind the
Yeah.
bus.
Behind the bus, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And
Where
the
existing is.
Aptos Creek Road would be in front
In
of it.
front of the, okay.
Yeah, and I think what Gary was saying, one
I'm
of the
sorry.
rationale for moving the bus stop was that it's gonna be too close to this intersection. I also think that in looking at previous communications with a lot of business owners around here, that parking's pretty coveted around here.
Mhm.
There's not a lot
Well,
of
they're
it.
supposed to be adding more of it in the village project.
Hundreds.
Yeah. They're supposed to take care of all that problem.
So, did you want me to address that?
Yeah, I mean,
What I understand is, so what I
Can
understand.
we please, I'm just asking to kind of be included here to.
Yeah.
So
Identify yourself.
you're suggesting moving the bus stop.
forward.
Forward, okay.
Right,
So
inbound,
closer-
75 feet.
So
West
closer
or
to
north?
Trout Gulch.
Closer to
Closer to
Aptos Creek.
Creek Road.
I mean, Aptos. Creek,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Pardon me, that, okay.
My understanding was that in working with a lot of the businesses over here, that they wanted to keep this area for as much parking as possible for their businesses. And you can imagine business owners are very sensitive to, if people have to walk too far to get to a business, that I think that business owners feel like they may not get the same patronage that they would get if parking was closer. And my understanding is that was a part of the consideration, was working with the community on this.
Well, you're giving up the same amount of space where the bus stop is now, just by moving it forward. So the parking hasn't changed. The available parking has not changed at all
I think
by
that-
moving it forward.
Right.
So I'm going to say it again. So my understanding is why they actually decided to move the bus stop from this location back down to here was because that they were working with the business owners. The business owners were concerned they wanted more parking out here. Okay,
Mhm.
and so I think that was part of the consideration, and also its proximity to Parade Street as well.
Mhm.
So this is a really tight, complicated area. If you look at the way that this area was constructed historically, if you look at the way Aptos Street comes in with Soquel Drive, comes in Trout Gulch Road, this is, I don't know, maybe for lack of a better term, it's kind of funky.
Well, it worked fine for 50 years that I've been there,
Right.
before they got into this mess.
Yeah.
That should have never been passed in the
Okay.
first place.
So what I understand is that this intersection has operated at a really, really low level of service for many, many, many years, under peak, the peak conditions.
Well, it was set up properly. You had 2-lane road coming in.
Okay, so
and you
I'm
had
not
2-lane
answering your
road.
question, I can feel you, I
Yeah.
can't not, so.
Veronica, Kurt,
Yes, Kurt.
question about the Parade Street, how far does that, is that just going to a driveway or parking lot, or is it?
It goes into
connect?
the development, it connects into the interior roads of the very sensitive development. Yeah.
Question,
Okay, you,
is there parking available on Parade Street?
I'm not on this side, not on the Soquel Drive side.
But those two developers are going to be located on either side of Parade Street. And their customers can drive into Parade Street and park right in front of their building. What do they need to park out on Soquel Drive for?
I'm not quite sure how to answer your question, I think I was
Of course you're not.
I was referring to
You
the
have to
business.
study.
no, calm down.
I was referring to the businesses right here. Yeah, and
Existing business.
And I'll be honest with you, I didn't design this project. I'm just here to lay out what it looks like to me. So I can't answer a lot of your questions as far as, which business owner is going to have whom parking in front of where.
Stanley Sokolov?
Okay,
Again?
Stanley.
Yeah, regarding collisions in the intersection from people speeding through the last moment. The way they deal with that in Monterey, as I understand it from a police officer there, is they have their signals timed so that all directions have red for 4 seconds after a transition. So there's time for the latecomers to clear the intersection before there's a conflict.
But they're still gonna be racing for it. You know, just like any other intersection. You see the light turn yellow, I'm sorry, Gary Lindstrom. You see the light turn yellow, and how many people in here have not stepped on the gas to get through the
But
intersection?
it takes a finite amount of time for them to get across the intersection, especially if they're racing. And if you make all directions red for at least that much time, there's time for these people to clear the intersection before the new cars come in. It's a simple tweak of a timing.
But you've got three intersections right there.
They can do it on all of them.
Becky Steinbruner with a comment.
Okay, Becky?
Thank you for the presentation, and I really want to thank you for taking the time to come here and explain this to this group and to the public. Thank you. I have a number of questions. I know that there was another site considered. The site where the construction is already beginning is Site B. Site A was on the other side of the Trout Gulch intersection between what is proposed to be Parade Street and Trout Gulch. Why was Site B chosen over Site A? Because Site A is level, it has good line of sight visibility, it has the ability for the bus to get completely out of the lane of traffic, and it does not create a complicated maze of 7%, 8% landings here and there for the riders who are being asked to navigate this new area to get on the bus. This does not seem like a good service to the bus riders. And this area also will remove parking for those riders who come to town, park their car in the area, and get on the bus. Because if you live in that area, you know that there is no parking on Aptos Street because of the businesses there that are very popular. And it's very narrow and constricted in there too. So why was Site B chosen over Site A? And I guess my primary question is, why is this being done at all?
Well, maybe I can answer your primary question first.
Thank you.
I think that the signalization of both Trout Gulch Road and Aptos Creek Road are being done to raise the level of service of those intersections.
Well, I'm talking about the bus stop relocation. That's what I want to address primarily right now. Why is the bus stop being moved at all?
Okay, so I think that what's driving the whole project is the signalization and the need to have better traffic operations through the area. And I think that in working with the community that they were interested in also some improvements along Soquel Drive. And so they're, you know, the county's actually providing quite a bit of improvements when it comes to like sidewalks and bicycle lanes and so forth like that. And I think, you know, it's a balance, right? We can't get a full standard 12-foot lanes, you know, 8-foot sidewalks, all that kind of stuff through there. And so once again, I think I sort of used this analogy, which kind of thread the needle, if you will, trying to provide for both pedestrian, bicycle, and also parking and accessibility. And so I don't know the answer, though, to your first question, which was, why was Site B chosen over Site A? So I don't know the answer to that question. I'm looking at it, and I suspect it has something to do with this left-hand turnbuckle that needs to be developed from Soquel Drive onto Trout Gulch, and that there may be some geometry. And I haven't looked into that, but we can certainly look into that and get back to you.
It must be a matter of record. I mean, this is a rather significant outlay.
I haven't been that involved, Ms. Steinbruner, in this project, and so I was really just here to talk about the bus stop. So I don't know why that decision was made.
Yeah. Is it a done deal that Parade Street will be created? Because there are significant legal questions around the Public Utility Commission's requirement that 2 private at-grade rail crossings be closed before they will allow this new private at-grade rail crossing to be created. One of those crossings to be closed is the Bayview Hotel. That is very soon to be under litigation. The other is in Davenport, And there has been significant pushback from the community and the National Monument people. And I understand in talking with Mr. Felix Coe, the engineer.
I just want to remind you that today's agenda item is specifically on the Metro Route 71 inbound bus stop location.
All right, my question is it a done deal that Parade Street will occur? And if not, then there really is no reason to move the bus stop.
I can't answer your question as far as a done deal goes. I know that it's an option that was approved in their development. I know that there is an option where they can still phase in their development without Parade Street, the crossing. But I can't answer your question if it's a done deal yet or not.
I have one final question. When was the traffic study done to support these 2 traffic lights and traffic improvement?
I don't think I can answer that question. I'll have to get back to you on that.
How about your engineer? Do you know?
I don't know the exact year. I think it's in the environmental review initial study, and that it happened
10.
10.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, this is 2017. Traffic is way worse than it ever was in 2010.
Yeah, way worse.
Thank you.
Remember, we're traffic down now.
Stanley Sokol again, if I may.
Okay, let's just see, were you speaking? I'm sorry, the engineer first. You caught me,
Oh,
I didn't want to.
I was just saying, I heard your comments regarding, how fast the traffic, comes out underneath the trestle and stuff. So I only came into this project a little over a year ago. But so as far as answering why the bus stop was being relocated, Jack was now retired. We weren't part of that correspondence that.
I'll make a brief comment as to why the bus is being relocated.
Okay.
It is in your packet, by the way, in the Aptos village plan. There's a certain amount of parking that's required, and it was something that was agreed. Pretty much what Steve has mentioned earlier. You have a number of businesses across the street that have very limited parking. So as a result, and for Veronica's sake, that we're talking about between Parade Street and the Aptos Creek Lane or whatever road. So that section in there is pretty much covered. If you envision this, you have your businesses across the street. They have very limited parking. They wanted additional parking across.
The bus stop being there. It's dangerous. It's not, I'm just telling you, it's dangerous.
Could you bring it back up, please, so we're
The
looking
design?
at the design?
Yeah.
This is under, I think you had these sections, when we've been looking at the Chestnut entire road. Yeah. Yeah, just from my, I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm not a roads maid, is that, it's a complicated area. And when looking at this visually, just from, how things are laid out for the businesses. And if you're balancing that and red lights, I don't know about anybody else, but lately, I have been sitting back amazed and watched how many people go through red lights.
Yeah.
They've turned red.
Well, and again, it's an engineering standpoint.
So do I.
So,
Looking at it.
Triumph Road, you've got, streets and close what I know about this, so stop intersections are very inefficient. For the Aptos Creek Road signal and the Trop Gulch Road signal and the Spreckles signal, and really they should synchronize all the way up Soquel Drive, all the way up State Park Drive. If you get them all synced up, it's actually simplifying the traffic operations in the area. So what I didn't mean to say was the project is complicating the area. What I meant to say is that it's a complex area to deal with. But I think by signalizing these intersections, you have the potential for operations to be more smooth through the area. And they wouldn't operate at such a low level of service. So I don't know if that helps explain what my point was, but that was what my point was.
Yeah, I understand that it's, and that looking at it, that's what I'm saying, is that why would you want to add another level if that it's complex, and I understand what you're saying about improving the flow of traffic through that. But I also do know that there is, really a very different kind of level of people observing and, the traffic signals in the way they're supposed to be observed. And that just putting that in place with the complicated area, trying to move, a bus into that picture then that's pulled over at that point in time. It just seems to me like you're adding a level of complication and complexity to an area that is already seems to be very dense.
Yes, that's true.
Anyway.
So I have a comment and a question. I'm also not a resident of Aptos, and I can tell you unequivocally, I've lived here since 1980, and I do not ever shop in Aptos because I so hate crossing SoCal. So if somebody is thinking about putting in some signalized intersections so that you have at least a chance of being a little safer to cross, that's not totally a bad thing. My second question is in terms of, what can happen, where would be some good appropriate discussion places. What's the timeline for the construction of this in terms of when the new bus stop would be constructed? When is this supposed to actually happen right now?
It's actually under construction right now. So the bus stop improvements that we just spoke about, that's part of the contract to put in the signalization and improvements, what we're calling the phase 1, which is basically the improvements to the intersection of Truck Road and SoCal Drive. So it's actually being constructed as we speak. And if you've been through the area recently, we've noted that.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
You stay away from
Well, maybe the signals will make it more enticing for you to visit the area once pedestrian access.
Because that's the reason I haven't. Because they go so fast along SoCal Drive, and there's no signals to stop anybody. And I tried it like a couple of times and kind of went nope. And because I just didn't enjoy it. And if I go shopping, I want to enjoy it. But in terms of, I don't know when early discussions might have taken place. So I think my next question would be to those of you from Aptos, was there discussion between, bus advocates and these business owners about this particular placement of the bus stop at the time? Or was there not enough specifics at the time? Because I don't know what went on in the community discussions. And can any of you?
Veronica Grace, this committee did receive information about the Aptos Village project.
Yes, we
June
did.
2013.
Yes, we did.
At that time, we understand there weren't details of the bus stop relocation.
Right, but that's why I was asking about community discussions among Aptos residents, between the business owners, because it sounds to me like somehow from discussions they were trying to figure out what everybody's needs were, and there was reference to accommodating the needs of the business owners for parking. So I was just wondering if any of you Aptos residents were aware of specific discussions that you participated in with business owners at the time?
No, I did not know of any discussions. All the discussions that we were informed of were in reference just to the village project. It didn't, the workings of the roads and things like that weren't brought up. It was mainly getting the project under construction and getting the permits going and all that.
Right.
Becky Steinbruner with a comment.
Okay, Becky.
There really were no community meetings after the Aptos Village Plan was approved by the Board of Supervisors in 2010, I think that was. The discussions, and I know this only because I've filed multiple Public Records Act requests, and I've seen the almost weekly meetings that occurred at the site and at the county building between Public Works and County Supervisor Peary and the planning department and the developers and the businessmen. They were all brought in, and those things were discussed behind closed doors, not open to public discussion, and that is how these concessions got born. There was no discussion amongst the public regarding this bus stop, and I'm disappointed that the final specifications were not brought to this committee for your consideration. You did approve it in concept in 2013, but the choice to go with location B was not made until, I believe, 2015 or even 16, quite quickly before or close to the time the project was actually put out to bid. So that's what I know.
Okay, so, and, you know, when I think about the history of this committee and what things we do and what things we don't do, we've had projects that came through in pretty extensive detail when we make a recommendation. So what we do, just for anyone who's new and may not know, is that usually when a project comes here, we're not involved in great detail in the project itself. We often will recommend to the RTC, yeah, this looks like something you should consider funding. So we are kind of advisory in that sense. We don't ever have the final say in a project. But given the information that's presented to us, we then make a recommendation to the RTC as a whole, yeah, this looks good. So I doubt that every single project has come back to us a second time without a specific reason, because they got the funding. So there wasn't a reason or a threat to the funding, I don't presume. You know, so in terms of why it did or didn't come back to us. I think sometimes when kind of there's discussion, and it also, with a discussion of a bus stop, I haven't seen any questions come up at the Metro Advisory Committee either. So I'm trying to formulate in my head what would be kind of a reasonable angle of discussion and where for you guys to follow at this point, given how far along it is. I don't know, and I'm thinking out loud, so consider it appropriately. I was trying to think about, any way to have communication between you guys and the business owners, where you, hey, stop. Good girl. Getting bored down there, chewing on our leash. Any way for, to have a discussion, look, now that with the business people, how much parking, because I don't know, it's hard for me personally to have a really good concept in my head of if you did the 75 feet forward on the bus stop, how many parking spaces would be where, what kind of, deal you might be able to make with them. And, has anybody talked to any of the business owners recently? I
Yes.
kind of figured.
Gary
you
Lindstrom,
did,
yeah.
okay.
I know Chris very well. He owns the Aptos garage, and he's one of them that's concerned about the parking on there. And I told him, I said, well, what about if your parking that you have directly across the street, which is going to be affected anyway by the new intersection being put in at Granite,
Aptos Creek.
Aptos Creek Road, okay.
Parade Street.
And then I said, would it make a difference if they moved your parking to the right a little further, behind the bus stop if necessary? And he says, no, as long as I have the parking that, that I have, because they leave their service cars across the street during the day, and they run them back and forth for different jobs and things like that. I didn't talk to anybody else, but all the other businesses beyond that, beyond Aptos Village Garage and the tire company, have their own parking right in front of their place, plus the parking across the street, some parallel, some perpendicular. So, it's a matter of leaving what's there and just moving in my opinion, just moving the bus stop forward, which gives them access to a stoplight and a crosswalk that's going to be put in already also. Just like in decision B that they're doing now, and nothing's been built, it's only been dug out. So there's no construction there that's been done. There's no forms laid out, there's no nothing.
That's right.
So it's not a matter of a problem stopping it or tearing something out that's already been done. All they have to do is put the soil back. And by moving it forward again, you keep the people getting on and off the bus on level ground. You give them a lighted intersection with a crosswalk that they're planning on putting in anyway. And it gives them access to the whole village without any problems. So, and it would probably cost, I mean, even if you wanted to build the shelter and everything, which I think would be great, which they need, you're talking a few $1,000s, and here we're in for a couple $100,000.
Veronica, this is Luis, if I might add something.
Okay.
I'm Luis Mendes, Deputy Director of the Regional Transportation Commission. And I just want to add to some of what Veronica said in terms of the charge of this committee. Like Veronica said, projects do come to this committee or to the other committees of the RTC. For funding, sometimes some conceptual design, sometimes designs a little more more conceptual do come to the committees as well. It varies. And it is for this committee and other committees of the RTC has to make recommendations to the RTC and say, well, we think the improvements that are being brought forward are worth funding by the RTC. And so that did happen. We went to the RTC and the RTC approved funding for the project. And it isn't the job of this committee or the RTC to design the project. It is, or to conduct the public process for the projects that are not the RTC's projects. So it's a project of the county of Santa Cruz. It is for them, for the county of Santa Cruz, to determine what the public process is that they're going to use to be able to determine what their final project is going to be. We do not and cannot dictate that, and again, we're not designers of these projects because if we got into that, there would be liability issues for the RTC. So we cannot do that. So at this point, since this committee is committee looks into making sure that things are accommodated for folks that are disabled or elderly, that if there's something that designs where, let's say, the ADA wasn't being met or any sort of laws are not being followed, and that's clear to me, then this committee say, okay, that's these requirements are not being followed, therefore the RTC should think about that, because that is one of the requirements, of course, and the funding that the RTC provides, that any regulatory requirements that apply to the project are being met. And of course, in order for the county to make sure that they can build their project or anybody else, they have to get permits from regulatory agencies, and not meeting of those requirements, they wouldn't be able to build the project. So, and I think Steve already answered the question that was asked, whether the ADA requirements are being met. So yes, they are being met. Already Zero from the Transit District communicated this is an improvement for transit users, which I know is something that this committee looks at, make sure that that, accommodations for transit users are adequate and improved and so on, compared to what's out there now. So, I think for this committee, for the RTC, there really isn't much to really say or do. It really is, up to the county. As long as they're meeting all of the requirements.
I'm gonna ask my question and I'll give you a turn, John.
Thanks.
And also, I'm going to interject just because Tom had his hand up for quite a while. Is it, is your name, did you,
Okay, I'll put you right after my question, how's that?
Sure.
Thank you.
So, like I said, I've just been kind of trying to think out loud. We did have a few questions that Steve had been unable to answer. So I would like to suggest that we give Steve the opportunity to look into the answers and maybe provide them to Grace so that Grace can email them to everyone, or that somehow Steve gets the answers to the people that had asked the questions that he couldn't answer at this time. I realize this isn't part of the solution, but in a way, with all of the work and things that are required to put a project together, it's kind of a shame that it's such a long time between the beginning of a project and when it gets executed, because we have different residents, different staff, different, so it's neither here nor there in terms of a solution, but I just wanted to say it in terms of just me, the peacemaker. I mean, I think Luis is correct that it's difficult to figure out, a place for the committee per se at this time. But, the peacemaker in me wonders if it's possible for the county to just, arrange one evening or something where people could get together with business owners and residents and update on, okay, now we see what's actually happening. Can we ask you guys, does this matter to you? That if there could be some, just one evening so that the business and residents could kind of speak together, so that as you go along, whatever it is that you do, you've got a little more buy-in. And I can't recommend anything as the committee, but that's just kind of me, the peacemaker, thinking out loud.
Veronica, in
Yes.
terms of process, this is an information item that's before you.
Right.
If the committee chose to take action, it would likely be in form of a letter to the county with the specific
Right.
questions that you are referencing. I think we need to spell those out in an action so that all parties agree that those were questions that remain unanswered. And the response would come back to this committee at a future meeting if the county provided a response. It would not be in the form of an email.
Right, okay, gotcha. So, but I was just kind of issuing kind of this little, encouragement to the county was all I was doing. So Tom, you had and then John.
My name is Tom Strumbaugh. I live in Aptos. Many years ago, now I'm back. But what I see going on here is rather disturbing to me. My comments here are primarily for this commission, the people on this commission. You may recall that I came to a former meeting and presented a letter that was addressed to the Regional Transportation Commission. I think I'm saying that right. I don't know. He left.
I was aware.
I'm staff to the Regional Transportation Commission. I'm also staff to the Regional Transportation Commission.
Oh, okay.
I was aware of a letter to Metro.
Yeah, that, Mr. Stumba, you handed me a letter addressed to the Metro Board of Directors, and I forwarded that to the person who handles that correspondence to make sure that the board receives it.
I wanted to thank you very much for having done that. And,
Right, that's the letter I was aware
I
of.
would also say that I sent them a second copy of that letter, sent the people on that commission or board or whatever it's called, because there are additional comments that I thought of in the meantime. So thank you very much for taking care of that for me. But I have bills here. And I have noted things down here that I think about this whole idea. And my number one reason that I can figure out for moving this bus stop is to satisfy the selfish interests of developers. There's absolutely no reasonable explanation for moving this bus stop. It's in a perfect location now. I invited the members of that board to go out personally and take a look at the situation. That bus stop is presently perfectly situated, and it's on level ground. Now, these people have been talking all day about having to deal with a tight area. There's no such thing as a tight area where that bus stop is located now. And the present site has all the area you need without a bus sticking out into the road, which is dangerous for the oncoming traffic, many of whom don't give a hoot and they just suit. I was going to try to keep a civil voice here, but
It would be a good
I'm a little
idea, or I will
uncivil.
stop you.
The present site has all the area you need. The people doing business there have been doing business, thank you very much, for a long, long time without all of this falderall about moving the bus stop. So, you gotta squeeze things into a tight space while the present site is perfectly adequate to handle the job. The four-way stops here work better than the lights will anyway. Traffic flows rather than stop, go. Traffic flows nicely through those four-way stops. And I just don't understand the whole, and I would implore the members of this, what is it, a commission or a board?
Committee.
Committee. Committee? I would implore the members of this committee to absolutely not favor the movement of this bus stop. It's just not necessary. And why should we trade a good location for a tight space which is dangerous? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we are, it is coming up close to 3:20, so I would like to leave some time so that this committee can decide what it would like to do. Because since we've had, a lengthy discussion, I really don't want to go overtime. Is there anyone thank you everyone who has come to express your point of view. I get the passion, I get the discussion. I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate the staff from the county and Metro who have come to offer us their information and descriptions. And now let's see what we can figure out would be within our purview to do, or any suggestions that committee members might have. So anybody like to? Kara. Kara?
And then John,
okay.
and John in the queue after Kara.
It seems to me that we might send a letter to the Board of Supervisors and ask about this. I cannot supply the wording of such a letter.
Yeah, well, that would be Grace and my jobs to write letters from the committee. That's what we do. So, so you're thinking a letter to the Board of Supervisors?
Yeah, since it's been pointed out that it's beyond our purview to design a bus stop.
And any thoughts about what we would be asking the Board of Supervisors to do?
Could John step in and give?
Yeah, I think John.
Well, it just to offer, partly because, Grace, you made this recommendation rather than email to be a bit more, I mean, these are not your words, they're mine. By putting this through a more public avenue, since we are an advisory committee, in a letter to the supervisors, this is just for discussion of what a letter could include. I would recommend that a letter from E&D TAC, which is an advisory body, to the supervisors, contain the questions that that have been asked. There's things where Steve said we'll get back to you, but want to capture those questions in writing so we can expect a response in writing, all of which would be on the public record. So I'd support a letter that would include those questions, and also for consideration by the group, because I admit I'm a peacemaker, but my mind is a bit boggled by the details. I realize that this committee has on occasion shown preference on some projects, even if they may have dotted every I and crossed every T legally. For example, right outside the doors of this building, the interesting bi-directional, counterintuitive bike lanes with the nice striping is something, for example, this group did not support, as well as also favoring some features in the Arana Gulch trails. But I admit on this bus stop my mind's at least a little boggled, so in the words my former university, Fiat Lux, let there be light. So my recommendation would be that a letter from this commission capture the questions that were asked, looking for answers that would also be on the record. And I'd also ask the supervisors perhaps to work with Public Works for some kind of forum to interact with the Aptos residents and the business owners, because it seems that people need to catch up. And that's partly due to the peacemaker in me too. So I'd like to, if I can fumble that as a motion, I'd like to make that as a motion of a letter from E&D TAC to the County Board of Supervisors that would be also copied to keep them in the loop to the Transit District's Board of Directors and other pertinent persons.
Right,
John,
and the county.
Grace, question. In terms, could you specify the outstanding questions? I believe the questions that had been raised prior were related to the ADA compliance, and I believe those questions have been answered. Can you specify which questions in particular the committee would like responded to? And then if I may add a point of clarification, I thought the request had been to provide answers to questions to committee members via email, and that's where I recommended a letter so that we don't have any concern with dialogue amongst committee members over email.
Well,
Gotcha.
Well, anyway, the questions included about why site B and not site A. I know that was one question where Steve said, I'll get back to you, and there were a couple of others. So those are what I had in mind, where I heard as part of it, I'll get back to you.
I agree, that was the question, the outstanding question that I heard.
The other one is why not move it, Gary, why not move it forward 75 feet? If it's because my understanding was that they told us at one point that it was too close to Parade Street, the current site. So, but that doesn't even seem to be being brought up anymore. So by moving it, like I said, ahead 75, 100 feet, whatever, again, you're left with level ground. You have an intersection right there and stuff. So I would just be asking, why not just move it forward 75 to 100 feet?
There was another one. Becky, help us out here.
Isn't this deliberation amongst the committee now?
Pardon?
Are we the committee deliberating the action item right now, or are you opening it back up to the public?
We are deliberating the action item, and we are just you had asked what some of those questions were that he didn't know the answer to.
Did staff take any notes? Becky Steinbruner, we have 3 people here
Well, I think the
and
answer
staff.
to your question was because of parking.
Well, I heard many questions asked,
Right,
but I also
but
heard
there
them
were-
answered to different
Yeah.
levels, and so
Right,
it's
but
what
there
was
were a
the pertinent
couple-
question of the committee that was still outstanding from.
Yes, but there were a couple that, Becky, I know there were a couple you asked where he said I would have to get back to you.
Will
Correct.
Parade Street project occur? Was
Mhm.
one. And
Is
then
it a
also,
done deal?
Mhm.
Is the way I remember.
and then also a
Those were
meeting
my
with
words.
business owners and residents.
Yes.
Possibility with that.
And how was Site B chosen over Site A? That was the other, yeah. I have, Becky Steinbruner, I have a quick question and a comment, if I may. And it has to do with ADA compatibility requirements.
Okay, well, hang on just a
Okay.
second on that.
Thank you.
God, it seemed like there was one more. Usually I have
Yeah.
my
So the
YouTube with
questions
me.
that were being discussed were questions related to parking, and the requirements for parking.
Right, I
There's a
mean, 'cause-
question about the site relocation, both the site A or B referenced, as well as alternate locations. And those were the 2 that directly related to this item that had not been completely answered.
Mhm.
So,
Yes, Lisa.
yeah, specifically how I stated was that a requirement for the businesses in terms of the parking and the accommodation.
Right.
Accommodation.
Stanley Sotelo.
Um,
Just a reminder,
Mhm.
I pointed out that the width of the concrete landing pad for the
Correct.
bus, at the bus stop is
Right,
not
that was
wider.
not an unanswered, that Steve said I'll get back to you on. I'm just looking for specific items, and there were like 2, I'm trying to think, because they were things that happened earlier in the project. Where Steve said, I'll have to get back to you on that.
I think, Veronica, from what I recall, it all had to do with the rationale for relocating the bus stop. So maybe just one general question, what the rationale was for relocating the bus stop. I think the Parade Street is a great question, but it really isn't about this item.
Well,
Right.
it is, because that's why the bus stop's being moved,
Yes.
right?
That was the whole idea of moving the bus stop, was because they said it was too close to Parade Street.
Well, I think that was
Gary,
part
I'm
of it.
sorry.
If I may, Tom Steinbruner, Aptos, Parade Street is exactly where the bus stop should be. Right beyond Parade Street, just beyond it. That's exactly where it should be.
Right, okay, I'm gonna
So
bring us back to our motion
I
here.
have one quick question. Is 8%, 7%, do those grades on ramps meet ADA requirements? They seem steep, and I say that because I have many times parked my car to help someone in a non-motorized wheelchair up the ramps with those little bumps, because when you are very weak, those are hard to navigate, and a 7 and an 8% grade on a ramp is going to make it difficult to navigate for those who have mobility issues. Do those really meet ADA requirements?
They do.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the run of that sidewalk, as you call it, going down to the stop is 100 feet. The overall grade of the street is 5% grade. As I have read ADA requirements, there must be landing pads every 35 feet for grades over 2 to 3% for people with mobility issues to rest. Those are not built in to this design. And I will also point out to your comment that, well, it must be all right because it was approved. The reason the bus bay is narrower.
Okay, stop.
Okay, all right.
Stop.
Okay, the
Let's
bus
get-
bay is
no,
narrower
Stop right now.
because of
Sorry.
utility issues pointed out after the bids went out.
We need, okay, thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
I really appreciate it. We need to get back to what this committee is going to do.
Thank you.
And what we are hoping to do is either get a question answer or facilitate specific discussion, maybe between you guys and the county.
Or this committee could recommend to the county.
Right.
But that not to facilitate is not the RTC.
No, I didn't say we were gonna facilitate, I'm just talking about recommending, because that's not really what we do. So I wanna get back to the committee. We have a motion from John to send a letter to the, thank you. We have a motion. Okay, could we please? Thank you. We have a motion from John to send a letter to the Board of Supervisors from this committee asking that perhaps they consult with the county and answer our questions about why the bus stop was moved and why this particular design was chosen. And do you think, John, we should express what the concerns are or not?
Probably just to support the general question, a couple of points. Yes, I wouldn't say like a transcript from this meeting.
No, but saying that there are safety concerns.
Yes.
From residents. And that we ask if perhaps the supervisors would consult with the county or possibly suggest a meeting between the county and residents and business owners. Am I getting your motion correctly?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's seconded by Kara. So we have a motion, seconded by Kara, or proposed by John, seconded by Kara, to have the committee write a letter to the county supervisors asking, explaining that there have been some safety concerns expressed about this bus stop location and design, and could they consult with the county and get back to us about why those decisions were made, and could they assist residents and business owners and county staff in maybe having a discussion that would help to resolve the issue. Okay, so any further discussion from committee members? At this point, it's just committee members only. Kurt.
I have concerns about what we're actually trying to do, other than get more information. If the decision has been made and the construction is underway, that's a different thing at this time.
Okay. I think that if I'm understanding the motion and things correctly, that since the construction has not yet, I mean, it's slated, things are kind of set in motion, but we are responding to a visit from residents who say there was no place for their input, basically, is what I'm hearing. And so we are asking the county supervisors basically to talk to the county, take a quick look at this particular design to make sure that safety concerns are addressed. And because they can work with the county in ways that we cannot as a committee. Any comments from other committee members?
So, Lisa?
Yep.
You know, I think it's valid. I think you summed it up correctly, that we're responding to several residents of Aptos that have come to speak to us on that issue. That's part of our job as the committee to do. And so I think that, you know, we're fulfilling that obligation. So I think your summation was accurate.
Okay, any other comments from committee members? Shall I call for the question? Hearing no other discussion, we have a motion, which is to write a letter to the County Board of Supervisors requesting that they consult with the county and look into why the bus stop needs to be moved and why this location was chosen, because we have had residents coming and expressing safety concerns and asking if perhaps there is a way that the county and residents and businesses could get together to clarify and work through things before it's actually built. So, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstain? Okay, we have one abstention. That gives us 5 yes votes, motion carries.
Veronica, Terry, did you abstain too?
I abstained too.
Okay, so we have 2 abstentions, 4 yeses, and no nos. Sorry about that, you were very quiet, Tara. So the motion does carry. So Grace and I will get the letter written. And at this point, it is 3:35. It is time to adjourn this meeting. Our next committee meeting will be Tuesday, November 14th at 1:30 right here. It's a full agenda. We'll be looking at TVA claims. I hope to see all of you there. And thank you very much, everyone, for your time, your discussion, your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veronica.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. And thank you, Mr. Doty. Thank you.
You're welcome.